Patty, I see you. No sound though. Let's see if I can get you to unmute there. Do you have a microphone with a little line through it anywhere? We still have no sound for Patty. Linda Krager, who is our budget chair, is joining us tonight, getting prepared for doing a Zoom meeting for the budget committee next week. So she's on here, just not on video. Hi, Megan.
YouTube to find me or something?
Sammy, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm just going to try and shut down the other ones that aren't working.
Good. Oh no. It's like my screen just froze up. Sammy, can you hear me?
I can.
My screen just froze up. I can't see anything.
Will you check on your phone and see if it's streaming?
Yep.
Be able to.
It is there.
Awesome.
But for some reason, I am totally frozen.
You want to go out and come back in and we will kick off?
I'm trying.
Okay. If not, Mandy, if you just stay frozen through the Pledge of Allegiance, then we can figure it out.
Okay.
The only one we're missing, it looks like, is Counselor Fox. So if we want to kick off and get started, and once we get through the Pledge of Allegiance, I will go ahead and shut the video off of everybody except for council and the city administrator, and we can go forward.
Okay, with that, I will call the May 12th Cobourg City Council meeting to order at 7:03. And I'll have to read this long little entry for everybody. Before we begin, this meeting is being held through Zoom video conference and is being recorded. Presenters and members of the public will be unmuted and the video feature will be turned on during your scheduled presentation. This meeting is being streamed live on the city website. The chat function will be disabled during most of this meeting. We ask that all participants be respectful and remember that anything written in the chat will be part of the permanent meeting record. If this meeting is disrupted, we will mute and remove people as needed. I will call a 5-minute recess and all video and sound will be shut off. If we are unable to continue, the meeting will be closed. Sammy Egbert will immediately get council on a teleconference for city council to schedule a new meeting to continue the business and adjourn. If you have technical issues during the meeting, please contact Mandy at 541-520-6491 and we'll do our best to help. So at this time, if we could do the Pledge of Allegiance, which is being led by Kira Balcom, Mandy's 7th grade daughter. She's a 7th grader at Briggs Elementary School. So thank you, Kara. Everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kara.
You're welcome.
Roll call, please.
So we have Mayor Smith, Counselor Bell, Counselor Alexander, Counselor Blaine, Counselor Fox, Counselor Lehman, Counselor McConnell. All counselors are present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Sammy. Mayor's comments. I have a few. Coping with COVID-19. I think one of the most important things for our employees and all of us is that as leaders, we need to make sure that we're setting solid, reasonable expectations. This hopefully will avoid any confrontations with the public, as I believe clear guidelines are the best thing for all of us to understand what our expected behaviors are. My personal read on local police enforcing our social distancing is that they really shouldn't be. The state has resources such as OSHA and the Oregon Health Authority to work with businesses. It's just a common courtesy thing that we're looking for from the people to maintain distancing and respect everybody's concerns over the COVID-19. And I would hope that our police don't have to deal with going to every call because somebody's not standing 6 feet away from somebody else. I get out once in a while and go shopping and stuff, and it's been pretty reasonable out there, and I hope that we can just keep going with that. The capital projects that the city has undertaken will continue to move forward. The well site, I-5 Bore, Johnny Diamond Park, and others will continue as allowed. One thing that we haven't had a lot of discussion on, I tabled the transportation utility fee. And I don't think we're going to be bringing that up until spring of 21 unless things change. I'm very concerned about the burden on residents without knowing more about the economic situation of both the city and our residents before we start taking on the tough. And if counselors have concerns or questions about that, certainly you can forward those and we can take a look at that. But that's my read on it right now, is the tough is delayed for probably up to a year. The state is looking at about a 17% reduction in revenues. This number changes. This is the third number I've heard in the last week from them, which just really elevates the concern for our budgetary issues and especially our revenue. Coburg shouldn't be affected as severely, but we will see less revenue. We're budgeting accordingly. And we're keeping in mind that property taxes in Coburg are pretty stable. Even through the 2008 recession, we didn't see a loss in revenues like many other agencies did. Our values held pretty well and people paid their taxes. So I think that's hopefully going to continue, but we're going to be careful and we're going to look at those numbers as they come in at the end of the year and make determinations. But until then, you'll know at the budget presentation that we're trying to be conservative with this, but realistic also. Coburg has grown and we will continue to provide quality service to our citizens. Careful planning and conservative budgeting will keep the city viable. The last few years there's been a rise in divisive behavior and national partisanship. I love Coburg because we can usually put our differences aside and do what's right for our community. I'm sure that will continue. I only hope this pandemic has given us all time to reflect on what is truly important to us all, and that we experience a rise in community accountability and greater respect and consideration in the behavior all across America. And again, if any of the counselors have concerns about some of the things I've mentioned, particularly the tough, please put those concerns forward to staff and we can look at those. But I truly believe we're in a holding pattern until we see where projected revenues and actual revenues are going to come in at the end of the year. So with that, I'm going to ask for an agenda review, Sammy.
Yeah, we have a couple of changes on the agenda tonight. Everybody was emailed this afternoon the memorandum of understanding for the COVID-19 assistance grant funding. That will go under tab 7.5. And the second one is on the iPad policy. It was on there for council action tonight. That's just going to be a council update. That's tab 9.
Anything else for agenda review, councilors? Seeing none. Citizen testimony.
The city received no written testimony, or there's nobody here to speak tonight.
Okay, thank you. I will give an opportunity for city council. We have a response by city council. I made a lot of statements there. Is there any comments from council after my comments? Moving forward. The consent agenda. These items are routine procedural informational items and are not allotted discussion time on this agenda. Any counselor may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion by requesting such action prior to consideration. Under consideration is the minutes of the March 20 emergency city council meeting, ratifying order 2020-05, administrative order extending the state of emergency through May 1, 2020, and the second ratification of administrative order 2020-06, extending the state of emergency through May 13, 2020. Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Councilor Lehman.
You have to unmute.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I was being able to be heard before.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. I had my hand up earlier, but I don't think you saw it. Just
Oh,
a
sorry.
question on streets. Will we still be able to go forward with the Coleman improvement this next year? Even if we put the tough on hold?
Good question.
I thought we had a pretty large sum of money in the budget, $1.5 million for street improvements.
Well, we had applied for a grant. I'm not sure. Well, I heard that we were applying for a grant. Where are we standing with that, Ann?
I have to be unmuted. There I am. We are applying for grants, but if you remember, we decided that we were going to switch that application to take care of the maintenance needed on all of our collector streets. And so that is the applications that we are submitting. That Coleman Street is a collector, so there would be maintenance on Coleman. But as far as the large project that we initially talked about, the council, I know we talked in council regarding really switching that to an overall maintenance of all of our collector streets.
Now that you mentioned that, I do remember the patchwork map showing the different types of work that needed to be done on the collectors and the discussion. Does that answer your question, Councilor Lehman?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving forward with the consent agenda. Again, I'm going to ask if anybody wants anything removed. Seeing none, I would accept a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second,
I second.
Second.
Counselor Fox moves, Counselor Alexander seconds to approve the consent agenda. With a show of hands, all those in favor? 2, 4, 6. Any opposed? I gotta ask. Any abstentions? Passes 6-0 unanimous. Thank you. We have no special guests. City administrators.
Mayor, excuse me. Counselor Fox is trying to talk. John, for some reason, I can't unmute you. Can you try to unmute yourself?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Counselor Fox.
I just had a question about the Coleman thing. I got confused. I understood the patchwork quilting, but it talked about maintenance. Was the repair going to be in that? Or I got a little lost in that whole thing because originally it was going to be, you know, kind of overhauling the street to a degree, and now it's maintenance. And I understand the reason for the patchwork quilt. That way we could bend around the rules of the grant and all the requirements for sidewalks. But I was just trying to get a clarity what maintenance meant.
Sammy, can you unmute Jeff, as he is the one that is actually putting that application together?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Jeff.
Okay. Yes, what we ended up going with was, as per discussion and council directions, or sort of redirection. First of all, the project in the beginning was just sort of a discussion starting point. And we got to a pavement preservation type application for all the collector streets, which includes Coleman, but it also includes the rest of the collectors in town, which are East Mill, Locust, one block of Skinner, Harrison, East Van Dyne, and East Dixon. That's one application. 2 others are for Roberts Road and North Coburg Industrial Way. That's all of our collectors.
So again, a better description of maintenance. There's actual
Pavement
repairs
preservation.
and rebuild.
Yeah, more of a pavement preservation and spot fixes or spot rebuilds. Some of the failing spots that get water, you know.
Right. Did that answer your question, Counselor Fox? Shake your head more. Yes, thank you. Okay, any other questions? I'm finding myself trying to read my script all the time and not pay attention to you. I'm sorry. I'll try to stay up on that. City administrators report. Ann.
Well, good evening, everyone. Things at City Hall are continuing as they have been for several weeks. We are still closed to the public. And there is some staff still working from home and some staff working in City Hall. The plan for this is to continue right now until the county moves into a phase 1, which could happen as early as Monday. As of 6 o'clock tonight, the county's application to move to phase 1 was still marked under review. If we are allowed to move to phase 1, then that changes a lot for the county. We will start seeing our restaurants in Coburg opening. Some businesses will open, and at that point, I think it's going to be appropriate that City Hall open to the public. We will have limited access of how many people can be at the lobby at one time. And we'll definitely be holding to the social distancing recommendations. At that point, all staff will be called back to work because we do have the ability to allow for distancing between all staff. So it's kind of a hold pattern right now regarding how that's going to go. I hope that maybe we'll hear tomorrow, but I don't know that for fact. If the county isn't allowed to go to phase 1, then we remain as we are now, and City Hall will remain closed. I do believe strongly that opening without a governor's order changing is the wrong message, would be the wrong message to our public. And so we would remain status quo. The emergency order that the city is under actually ends this coming Friday. And as long as the county is under an emergency, then the Coburg should continue to maintain our emergency order. I did see a polling of all the small cities in Lane County today as to who would be maintaining their order, and they all are maintaining the order so long as the county is. So we will also go ahead and renew that this coming Friday. As far as projects, nothing has changed in the project since I wrote my city administrator report. They are moving along as fast as they can. Unfortunately, it's a little complicated right now. It's a little clunky as we work with other agencies, and a lot of people working from home, a lot of delays in responses, but we're getting there. The I-5 bore is very close to being ready to go out for RFP. We're just waiting on the water board to approve our application. I'm just looking at what else here. The community development fund, the money that the council has voted to send to the foundation, that process is going well. The applications did go out on last Friday, and they are due back this Friday for the businesses. The process is going okay. It's not perfect, and we've had to make a few changes along the way. We haven't done this before, so we're learning as we go, but I think it is going very well. The reason that you're seeing a MOU in your red folder, and we will address it at tab 9, is because after the council approved the amended MOU, the foundation, when they considered, looked at it, they decided that they really did not want to, they wanted to separate the two projects they're doing with the city and keep their original MOU with the funds that were budgeted for them, and then put together a new MOU. So the mayor and I were able to review their draft of an MOU, and neither one of us had a problem with it. It's a short-term project that we anticipate is going to be done very quickly. And so, so that's why we went ahead and brought forward another MOU tonight, and we can talk about that when it comes up. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the city administrator's report, and the other department directors are also here to answer questions. Some of them will need to leave tonight after this portion of the meeting. So if you do have questions regarding their department reports, please go ahead and ask them now.
Councillor Blaine.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious about the fiber in the city and kind of where that stands with LCOG, and kind of that plan and what it looks like and timeline, because that's kind of an exciting thing to happen here.
It is exciting. So at this time, the fiber lines are owned by the consortium, and
Right.
Which is managed by LCOG. And so what has happened is the consortium has made the decision that they would reduce the cost of renting the fiber to Coburg, because the fiber doesn't travel as a crow flies, and it comes in from 42nd Street and along Mackenzie. So we weren't getting interest in people actually bringing or hooking into the fiber from providers, because the cost was going to be so high to lease the lines. So with the consortium's decision to reduce the cost of leasing the lines, we do have two providers that are interested, And so Jake Callister at LCOG is representing the consortium on behalf of Coburg. And they are working through the possibility of a lease. For one of the, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. It's going to take a
Right.
little bit of time, but it is going to happen. And so at this point, the discussions we're having with them are how do we get it from where it ends in Coburg and then up to I-5 and over the other side of the freeway, and also to our neighborhoods. Also the discussion is laying some empty conduits in new neighborhoods so that we make sure that we're able to hook up those new neighborhoods. I'm trying to think if there's anything else important in that. But right now it's kind of, we're waiting on the consortium to work through a lease on the fiber lines with providers.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Fox.
Two questions. One, is fiber optics already laid up into Coburg? And if not, what was all that trench work with cables going underground 18 months ago, 2 years ago?
The cable is already laid to Coburg. It ends
Okay.
up in, Jeff may have to correct me, but it ends up, I believe, on Delaney. I might be wrong there. But so the fiber line it's just not turned on. It's dark. There was some cable work going in 18 months ago, but that had to do with a different utility. It was not the fiber, the high-speed fiber lines. That was Brian, can you help me with who that was laying the fiber? It was
It doesn't matter. I just saw it being laid. I thought it was.
yeah.
So
Thank
it
you.
is.
Charter Communications, wasn't it?
Spectrum
Yes,
and Charter is
thank you,
what I thought.
Thank you, Ann.
Any other questions? With the comments to extending our emergency declaration and staying with the county and the cities within our county, I certainly agree with that. The other thing I was just wondering is, are we posting what our city hall guidelines, are we updating that on our Facebook? And is it on our webpage that, you know, that I know it is as far as the closure, but when we change that, if we change it soon, can we keep that updated? Because one of the things I'm hearing is people get kind of upset when they look and they aren't finding information, and then they go to the building and find out that the information's posted on the wall. Are we doing things out on the web to keep that up?
We have a COVID-19 page on our website, and as far as I know, anything that we have put out, Megan has been really great to help and get that up on the website. As far as our administrative orders, things like that. When we do change, actually, I did see a great example that Councilor Bell shared today of a welcome back statement that I thought was really well done. And I anticipate that we would do something like that welcomes people back to City Hall and lets them know what the expectations are, what atmosphere they can expect. But as far as I know, we have been updating anything that we send out. We're placing on the website. So.
Okay, Councilor Lehman.
Will our staff be wearing masks when the public come in?
Yes, our staff wear masks now when they're even interacting with each other. All of them have been provided masks, and we will continue to wear masks. Luckily, we all have separate work areas, so they can take them off and then put them back on when they're near someone else. But yes, they will continue to wear masks. We're also looking at installing sneeze shields at both the front counters.
And another thing, I don't know if we could provide it, but I know my wife included are making masks. But I talked with a gentleman when I had to have some dental work done today. He did not have a mask. And would we be able to have some masks available that if somebody came and they wanted, they wanted to wear a mask, we would be able to give them one and let them take it home. This gentleman was actually, sticking his face down in his shirt so he could talk with the person at the desk in the dentist office. Would we be able to have something like that?
I probably would check in with Chad Mentor to see if there's any way that he can get us some ones that we could hand to somebody to utilize. Cloth masks, I don't have enough right now. We've tried to get every employee at least two, but we could certainly request some masks, and he's been really good at letting us know that whatever we need, just to let him know. So I feel like we could ask to have some on hand. I think we do have a few, but we would definitely need more if we were going to hand them out.
Right. Okay. Any other questions on the administrative report? Again, any department head questions or anything, now is the time. Seeing no response, we'll move on to ordinance A163R. I'm going to open public hearing at 7:31 and hold the first reading of ordinance A163R, an ordinance adopting the Oregon Criminal Code, Oregon Uniform Controlled Substance Act, Oregon Liquor Act, and the Motor Vehicle Code, repealing A163. Chief Larson with the staff report.
So this is a housekeeping issue. We do it every year. So what this ordinance does, it adopts the Oregon Traffic Code and Criminal Code so that we can arrest and cite people into the Coburg Municipal Court. If we didn't do that, everything would go through Lane County Circuit Court or Lane County Justice Court for traffic. So we do this every year. This is just a housekeeping issue. And this is the first reading.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from council? Councilor Lehman.
So this is not new. This is something that's done every year, and it has to be updated because the laws change and the code changes.
Correct.
Councilor Alexander. Mute.
All right. Yeah, it said it would become effective 30 days after adoption. Is there a lapse, or do we carry it to the 30th day?
And Davies, I'm not sure that answer.
I'm not sure what you mean by is there a lapse, but the charter, anytime we adopt an ordinance, it takes effect 30 days from the adoption unless we have an emergency provision.
So all I care about is that we're covered up till that
Yeah.
take effect. Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions from councilors? Okay, it is 7:33 and I will close the public hearing for A163R. The second reading is scheduled for June 9th, 2020 at our council meeting.
Do we need a motion?
No, this is the first reading, so we're going to do it it'll be adopted on the second reading, hopefully. Let's see, resolution 2020-10, approving the transfer of appropriations for fiscal year 2019-20. Staff report by Ann.
So this is a resolution to make some of the changes in the budget that we've discussed on several different council meetings. The state of Oregon allows us to make changes. So long as we're not changing the appropriation of any one fund, then we can make them in transfers. We do have contingencies in those funds, and so we are able to make those transfers. So I just wanted to step through some of the things that were changing so that if you have questions, I can answer them. Economic development, this is a reflection of the $50,000 approved for the Coburg Community Foundation for the COVID-19 assistance program. In Park Capital, we're changing to get all of the Johnny Diamond construction costs into the correct year. When we started this 2 years ago, we weren't really quite sure where the park was going to fall, which fiscal year. So most of it is happening this year. We will have a tiny bit to clean up in the very beginning of next year. But for the most part, the park is fully being done in this fiscal year. If you remember back at the last council meeting, you approved a change order for the park structure. So that is included in this. Public Works personal services are budgeted in the general fund, and then there's transfers coming from the Public Works fund to pay back the general fund. And this year, the Public Works salaries were increased by $6,000. Primarily two things. One was, if you remember, that we did do a one-time award to all employees. And the other is that the Public Works team began receiving certificate pay mid-year this year. We increased the appropriation for debt. It wasn't off a lot. This happens with our debt account, especially Summit Bank, because that amortization changes a little bit. It probably didn't need to be done, except for why not clean it up while we're doing this. Water fund, we're adjusting to complete the water meter project. So if you remember, Brian came with a request to go ahead and purchase the water meters and complete the project in this year. And then the others are all street fund, sewer fund, again, are related to the personal services of the Public Works Department. And the sewer fund, again, just adjusting the debt. And it's a very small amount, but we might as well fix it while we're doing this. So again, if you look at the actual resolution, you will see that the actual appropriations don't change in any fund. We're utilizing contingency where they're available. And then in the street fund, it's not even, we don't even need to do that. We're just making a transfer from the regular streets, materials, and services to the personal services allocation.
Any questions for Ann or Brian possibly? No questions. I would entertain a motion. Councilor Lehman.
I move to approve resolution 2020-10, transferring appropriations for fiscal year 2019-20 in the general fund, street fund, water fund, and sewer fund.
I second.
That was Councilor Alexander with a second. Motion by Councilor Lehman with a second by Councilor Alexander to adopt resolution 2020-10, approving the transfer of appropriations for fiscal year 2019 and 20. All those in favor, show of hands. 1, 2, 3. We have 6 hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, it passes 6-0, unanimous. Resolution 2020-13, a resolution adopting the cybersecurity policy for the city of Coburg. Ann.
So this is something we've been working on for most of this fiscal year, a series of steps to get the city closer to qualify to purchase cybersecurity insurance. We can't just do it to say we want it. We have to qualify for it. So if you remember it, we did update our employee policy and we put some pretty stringent and a large section into our employee policy regarding cybersecurity. This is the second piece, and this has to do with how our IT is handled and how other vendors that might interact with our network, what the requirements would be for them. So this is a pretty comprehensive policy. It's been reviewed both by CIS, their risk manager, and by the LCOG IT department. And so this cybersecurity policy gets us one step closer to being able to fill out that application. And actually it's all filled out. I can attach this and our resolution to it and submit it to actually be able to purchase insurance. There's 29 points that we've had to work through with IT to get to this point, to be able to fill out that application. And at this point, we can pretty well mark yes to most all of those 29 points. The cost of the insurance when it's approved to go forward, it depends on what we want to apply for. 200,000 to 900,000 is what's available to us. Keep in mind that just for a very simple cybersecurity, any kind of an attack, the base cost is probably something around $400,000. It's expensive thing to happen to a city. The insurance is relatively inexpensive comparably to the risk. So I've placed a placeholder for $2,500 in the next year's budget to purchase. That would cover the $900,000 range of insurance. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the policy or regarding purchase of the insurance.
And as you've gone through this process, what have you discovered about our ability to recover and our data storage and backup? Are we in a good position now?
We are in a good position, and actually I'm told that we're actually doing much more than other cities our size. We're actually ahead of the curve, and we're being very proactive. Our backups, we do have a regular backup system. We are talking about doing an additional one, and that could definitely happen. But as far as what other cities our size are doing, we're definitely ahead of the curve on this.
The big concern would be obviously like Lincoln City and others, losing all of our data and having to rebuild. And is our backup policy isolating enough to where we feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, you know, in talking with IT, right now they basically said, I mean, we have the backup. It's at a separate location. Nothing is 100%, and the cyber attacks change every day, and it's continually a challenge to change what you're doing to ward off their attacks. But I think at this point we are working on all the right things, and I think that we do have a good backup system. We are talking about doing a multi-backup system, and so I think that the answer to your question is we're doing all the right things to the best of our ability right now.
Thank you, Ann. Any other questions from council?
No, but it sounds like we can be a model for other smaller cities.
Right. I just feel that we've jumped on this and took it very seriously. And I think that definitely we've been asked for our policy shared. And so I think we can share out with other cities.
Councillor McConnell, did I see that you had a question? No, okay. Anybody else with questions? Hearing none, I would accept a motion. Councillor Blaine,
I move to adopt resolution 2020-13, adopting the cybersecurity policy for the city of Coburg.
I have a second.
Second.
I heard Lehman beat you to it, I think.
He's a quick one.
Yes,
I was
he is.
quiet. It was-
Snuck in there. Okay, a motion by Councillor Blaine and a second by Councillor Alexander to adopt resolution 2020-13, a resolution adopting cybersecurity policy for the city of Coburg. Show of hands for all those in favor. I have 6. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes 6-0. Thank you, councilors. Action item, the MOU for COVID-19 assistance grant funding. Ann.
So again, you adopted, I printed it and walked in my office with it. You adopted the MOU, which was an amended MOU. So the Coburg Foundation had a MOU with us because we budgeted $5,000 in this fiscal year to assist them with their administrative startup costs. When we began talking about them taking on this project of being the organization to manage the grants, the business grants and individual grants that the city would fund with the $50,000. There was a decision to just amend the initial MOU and add in the new project. So there would still only be one MOU. After that was passed, the foundation had some more discussion on it. They decided they really wanted to keep 2 separate MOUs and keep the project separate, and requested that the council rescind your decision on the amended MOU, let the original MOU stand as is, and vote to pass the new MOU that is really just addressing the COVID-19 assistance program.
Questions? So I want to make clear, because my script is saying approve to rescind the MOU with the Coburg Community Foundation that was approved April 21st, 2020, to reinstate the original MOU dated August 2019, and approve the second MOU, which addresses the COVID-19 Community Assistance Program. Is that clear? So the discussion was that council said we would take the original MOU and amend it to include this. And I agree with the foundation that was kind of confusing, and let's have 2 separate things, because they're 2 separate items, 2 separate MOUs for 2 separate items. And that's essentially what we're doing. But we have to rescind the action of saying we wanted them to amend that MOU in order to get that. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear with that. And as Ann said before, we've reviewed the MOU. It makes sense. It's pretty clear and straightforward. And if anybody has any questions or comments on it, now's the time. Any questions?
I take it we don't have paper on this.
It was emailed to us because
On
it
the
was a
email.
red folder.
Okay.
That we got it after the packets were already completed, so we weren't able to get that into your packets.
Okay, I'm reading this.
You need a moment, Councillor Fox?
Oh, that's okay. No, no, no.
Again, is there any questions from council? And again, Ann and I looked at it and I feel very comfortable because it's just very straightforward. It's a simple MOU. With that, I would accept a motion. Councilor Lehman.
I move to rescind the previous MOU with the foundation and replace it with the existing MOU that we have, plus a second MOU addressing the COVID-19 situation.
Assistance grant funding.
Assistance program.
Is that clear to everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
I have a motion by Councilor Lehman. Do I have a second?
Second.
I saw Nancy first, so I'll give Councilor Bell the second. There is a motion by Councilor Lehman and a second by Councilor Bell to approve the city administrator enter into an agreement with this. Oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. A motion by Councilor Lehman and a second by Councilor Bell approving to rescind the MOU with the Coburg Community Foundation that was approved April 21, 2020, to reinstate the original MOU dated August 2019, and approved the second MOU, which addresses the COVID-19 Community Assistance Program only. All those in favor? Thank you, Councilor Lehman. All those in favor, show of hands, please. Aye. We have 6 hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes 6-0. Intergovernmental agreement with Cottage Grove for building permit. Ann, or Jeff, sorry.
I'm here.
I can hear you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. If you'll remember, I believe it was last meeting, although there were 2 last month and it's very confusing, there was an item to cancel our intergovernmental IGA, I'll call it, because intergovernmental agreement's going to just tie me up. IGA with Junction City for our building program services, and now here this next month is the item to move into our new agreement in the new fiscal year with our new partner, City of Cottage Grove, and attached is the actual IGA with all vetted language, and also the building permit program cost for reference. This is a budgetary item. It's in the budget, and so everything is accounted for in that sense. There's not really anything different to the type of agreement, except for we're going from a percentage of our fees based kind of agreement to a flat rate, which is good or bad depending on the year, I guess. In lean years, we will probably overpay, but have still the same high quality service. But in heavy years, we're going to have a very good deal. So that's all the new information I have, because it's really just kind of an ongoing program, new partner.
Questions from councilors? Councilor Alexander.
So Jeff, do you foresee us paying too much the first year we're using this?
To be honest, if this subdivision gets going as expected, I don't know what's expected anymore in anything. If it does get going, we will probably pay less than we would have under older agreements.
I hope so.
A year like we just had, which we kind of bottomed out around September, October, and haven't had a lot, steady, but not a lot, not like previous years. We'd probably overpay a little bit.
Okay.
Councillor Lehman.
So what was Cottage Grove's position on that? Was there discussion as to whether they wanted to do it on a per unit cost as opposed to a flat fee?
Yeah, so our initial discussions with them, they had this program set up already over the last year and a half, roughly, with partners in Veneta and Cresswell. And their structure was a percentage of their overall program base already. So that's what they proposed. And it was new to us, so we kind of had to get used to that, because even before we had this partnership with the Junction City over the last almost 2 years now, we had been with a third party that was a percentage-based structure as well. So to be honest, it's all new, and it, like I said, it's going to vary each year whether we comparatively, at least, because overpay underpay is kind of a tough way to look at it because it's its own agreement. It would be different than that way. But we are, as staff, as a city, we're very happy with the new partnership in the sense that they have a well-oiled machine and they are very courteous, very nice to work with, very good reputations, and that much is worth, a lot in that sense as well.
I think it's worth saying that there is a fixed cost for all cities that, we're required by statute to have a building official.
Yeah.
And so that's a staff person. When you look at the cost of what we're putting forward with this, to not have to provide a staff person and still have the depth of service that Cottage Grove is going to provide us, I think I kind of agree with Jeff a little bit. Underpay, overpay. Maybe there's better years that are advantageous to us.
Yeah.
There is that fixed cost for that building official that is a real hurdle for us in the size that we have, and even in the slow years, whether we do 3 inspections or 500 inspections, that building official has to be there. So I just see all kinds of good because Cottage Grove has a great team, and I'm looking forward to working with them.
So am I.
Any other questions from councilors? Hearing none, I would accept a motion. Councilor Blaine.
I move to adopt the city administrator to enter into an intergovernment agreement with the city of Cottage Grove for the purpose of providing building permit program services to the city of Coburg.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Lehman. A motion by Councilor Blaine and a second by Councilor Lehman to approve the city administrator to enter into an IGA agreement with the city of Cottage Grove for the purpose of providing building permit program services to the city of Coburg. All those, show of hand, aye, approve. We have all 6. Any against, opposed, and any abstentions? 6-0, passes unanimously. Okay, Sammy.
Before you go on, Mayor, I wanted to let you know Ann Davies has been ejected out of the meeting, and because of our settings, the way the settings are set up, she can't come back in once you.
What'd you do to her?
It was technical error. So she is watching as it's being live streamed on our website. She is available on the phone if we need her, and I will figure out how we get through this situation for the next time. But wanted to let you know. And I'm going to hand it over to Larry.
Thank you, Sammy. Larry has a little bit that he wants to present to council.
And I also got kicked out, but so I'm not Sammy, but here I am. I just wanted to give the council an update. Some of you might have heard that we had an incident this last Mother's Day at about 3:30 in the morning. We had a stabbing on North Coleman. We were about a quarter of an inch away from having a homicide. It was a birthday party where all kinds of drinking, and I got out of control. Somebody pulled out a knife during the fight, cut a kid's throat all the way across.
Oh my God.
Got within a quarter of an inch of the carotid artery. He almost died anyway, but friends swooped him up in a car and took him to the hospital. So we did some investigative work. We did make an arrest yesterday and charged a 29-year-old with assault in the first degree. So the district attorney's office is filing charges on that. So I didn't know if people heard rumors out in there, but we have made an arrest on that particular case. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
It okay?
Yeah, he actually came in the office today. They had activated the trauma team, actually did surgery immediately. You can see blood on the sidewalk, and it was a pretty good case. I mean, he was bleeding out pretty heavy, plus he'd been drinking, so there was a lot of blood. But hospital staff told Officer Wilson that they really didn't think that he was going to make it that night, but he did, which is a good thing.
How old was he?
I think the victim was about 27 and the suspect was 29. I just want to give you an update in case you guys hear anything out there in the community.
Councilor Bell.
So, Chief, how long does it take your officers to respond to a call like that in the middle of the night?
Probably 5 to 10 minutes maybe. I mean, we have take-home cars and we have our uniforms ready because we know that we're going to get called out, or we can get called out. Like tonight, I'm on call, so I'll have all my stuff ready to go.
Okay. I just was wondering if we as the city needed to look at call rooms or something like that, since most of your force lives out of the community.
I'm not, you kind of cut out a little bit, but we always have, so when somebody's not on duty in Coburg, one of the Coburg police officers are always on call. So Officer Lee lives kind of over by Valley River. Kevin just lives 4 or 5 miles outside of town. So it's pretty quick response.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, just want to give you an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Sammy, give us an update on iPads.
So the update on iPads. So we have the iPads are in. Counselors have their new email addresses that'll get checked out with them. We're working on drafting our policy for it. Mandy has done a lot of work on putting the original policy together. We've been busy with the Zoom and the technology meeting. And so you guys being remotely working with paper packets is really kind of, it doesn't make sense. So we want to try to get away from that. I talked with Ann today. She felt that the budget could support some agenda management software that will tie in with the iPads that will give you guys the capability to, it'll just tie to the streaming, it will tie to the PDFs, make them searchable documents that you can keep your comments in, everything will be electronic. So we're hoping to kind of push all of that out in July. I don't want to piecemeal it and teach everybody how to do it one way and then 2 weeks later say, let's do it again this way. The other reason we're going to hang on to them a little bit is because the budget committee coming up, if we have technical difficulties with our, because there's going to be an extra 6 people to train on this, they can actually come in and use an iPad and sit in the car for the 2 budget meetings. So the iPads will be there soon with the policy coming next month.
Councilor Fox.
So Sammy, you mentioned new email addresses. Is that just for the iPad or is that to replace the ones we set up as city councilors?
It's going to replace the ones that you guys set up for city councilors. The current iPads right now, there's a lot of liability because we don't have the retention that the city needs on your emails that come in and out and go. Plus, just it had to be done for the management software that we're using on the iPads. In order for them to be centrally managed through our IT process, it had to be a city-owned email to get into the system. So I think Councilor McConnell is she came on about the time that we switched over to the city emails. So she is using a city email right now. That's another thing that I didn't want to confuse you guys with having to check 2 different emails. So that was going to come with your iPad next month. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we just kind of transitioned from one and bought the other.
And again, one of the issues that I like with going to the iPad and the city-owned hardware for us to get into the software aspect of what we're doing as councilors and mayor is if there is ever an issue where there's a public records request, it is truly public property and it's not on our private hardware and stuff that the public can ask for access to. So just be aware of that when you're using things and working with your own computers or pads or phones even, that if you're communicating outside of the city communication and it has to do with our jobs as councilor and mayor, they can request that information and access to that information on your equipment. And so these iPads, I hope, will clean up a lot of that. And it's not even really an access because I've had a couple of them where the city attorney has had to come to me and say, I need access to these documents that you had on your computer. So this way they won't even have to do that because it's on city-owned property. They'll just access the documents per the request and move them forward. And it just makes it easier for Sammy and everybody on staff to deal with that. Any questions on that? Well, thank you, council. At this time, we're wrapping things up, so I would invite any councilor comments on any issues that you may have to want to share with us. Hearing none. Technology is a wonderful thing. Councilor Blaine.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the staff for all their hard work during this unprecedented pandemic. You guys have been working overtime and it's not unnoticed. So good job and appreciate all the hard work.
Thank you, Councilor. And it's true, there's a lot of extra work to work through all of this stuff and many hours spent just trying to get the Zoom and all the technology issues and security issues all together for us to have these kinds of meetings. And then a lot of research to make sure that we're staying legal and doing the right things as we go through these processes. I suspect that the budget committee is going to be a significant challenge because as Sammy pointed out, there's going to be 6 more people and then trying to get department heads in to cycle through and answer questions as the budget committee moves forward. So it's quite a challenge. And unfortunately, we're going to have to get used to it for a while, it looks like. You know, the best that I see in the next couple of months is a meeting limited to 25 people. And that's still going to be an issue, again, that I remind you that that's a personal choice. And if you're uncomfortable with coming into spaces, we can still retain this type of format to have our meetings because I want everybody to feel comfortable and safe as we're doing this. So we'll just wait to hear from the governor and what kind of changes will be made down the road. But the most important thing is to keep all of us safe and our employees safe so that they can provide services. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Lehman?
So the financial written report is just information for us to read, No discussion tonight?
Yes, unless you have questions. I forgot to point that out, but if there is any questions on that. Hearing none. Ann?
I just wanted to mention that if you're reading that financial report, the information that you approved tonight for the transfers of allocation, that's not going to be reflected in that because this is well before approving that. So it is as of March 31st. So the other thing I wanted to let you know is if you haven't already received your budget books, they are ready. I'm not sure who's already had them delivered, but we're happy to do that for you. But they are ready. So if you wanted to pick it up, just let us know and they're here. If you want it delivered to you, then let us know and we will do that. Keep in mind to make sure that you read the messages in every department. So there's where normally we have one budget message that covers the whole city. Each department has a written message this year so that you can hear that what they would have conveyed to you in a presentation verbally. They're trying to wrap that up in a short budget message. They will touch on their high points at the meeting, but they will mostly be looking for the budget committee to ask questions regarding their budget. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear so that people realize those messages are in there in every department.
Councilor Lehman.
Ann, do you want to talk a little bit about the interviews coming up on Friday?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to do that. So we had a first interview process last Friday. We had 6 interviews and we ended up with 4 final candidates who are all very well experienced. And I believe that we will have a great final interview process. Those will take place this coming Friday. We have a panel of Councilor Lehman, our third-party reviewer, Kathy Taylor, Sammy, and myself conducting those interviews. And I'm really excited about the applicant pool, and I am really excited about the whole process. I'm looking forward to it. Especially looking forward to not doing the finance job and city administrator job.
And we're looking forward to taking that burden off of you. Again, worth repeating though, again, when you get your budget packages, please read the department messages and get the detail from that written part because they're just going to summarize during our actual meeting because of the Zoom aspect of it, trying to keep it simple. So I'm looking forward to moving forward, and I hope we do get a good finance person, and I'm looking forward to Ann not doing both of those jobs and all the other stuff that's going on. Ann's to be commended, and as is all the staff, because they just seem to be doing double time, crossing over and doing things that just weren't there before because of COVID-19 and things like these Zoom meetings. But we're getting the job done. They are getting the job done, and I echo that. We're very appreciative. We all know that, and make sure that everybody knows that we know that and we appreciate it. So any other comments or questions? I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:13. Thank you, counselors and staff. Appreciate your help. Good night.
Night.
Night.